Hi there guys, welcome to the second term of Grade 12's Maths Literacy. So we're going to start off this term by having a look at banking. Now, today we live in a day and age where you can't take the money you earn every day and just hide it under your mattress. And we're also not pirates these days who are going to take our money and bury them in a treasure chest somewhere on some forbidden island. These days we use banks to help us manage our money and to keep our money safe. So, banks offer all sorts of different types of banking accounts and services. Some of you may already have your own accounts. But when you finish school and you enter the working world or go to university, you will definitely have to look at getting one. So the first type of account we are going to speak about is a savings account. A savings account is a bank account that earns interest, and you can use a savings account for short-term savings. And this is one of the two most common types of accounts. The second most common type of account is a check or current account. This is a bank account that is used to deposit and withdraw money by visiting a bank or an ATM. And just so you know, an ATM stands for automatic telling machine. You can even use this kind of account for internet banking or by writing a physical check. These are usually available for people who are earning a regular income. I must point out at this stage that today a savings account can be used much the same way as one of these check accounts. Let's move on to our next slide. Next, we have a fixed deposit account. This is an account that is aimed at those who have a lump sum or a large amount of money that they want to invest over a fixed period, so for a certain amount of time. So these can also be called a medium or long-term saving. On one of these kinds of accounts, you earn interest on the money that you have invested. We then have a credit account, and these are accounts where you have a credit card usually. This is an account with a bank, or it can be with a store as well, that allows the holder of the account to purchase items now and pay for them later. And while this sounds great, we're going to learn that they can be dangerous and in terms of your finances, and we're going to have a look at credit and interest a bit later. Then finally you have a debit account, and your savings account and current accounts are examples of a type of debit account. A debit account, this is when you have money in the bank, and that is the money you can use to buy things. So in other words, you have a debit card which can be used to pay for whatever you purchase. When that card is swiped, or when you withdraw money using that card, that money is deducted from the amount that you have sitting in your account. You don't have credit on one of these kinds of accounts. Okay, let's go on. I think we're going to have a look at a couple of problems, or we're going to do a worked example of the kind of things you might expect with one. Okay, so let's say you finished school, you've gotten your first job and you're working. You've opened an account with the bank. Now every month the bank is going to send you a bank statement to let you know what has been happening in your account, with your account, and what's been happening with the money in there, how much money you have left, etc., etc. So a bank statement will be sent to you every month, and a bank statement is just a document that gives you all the information about your bank account. Now a bank statement will usually show the following information. It'll tell you what transactions occurred and what date they occurred on. So every time you draw money or you make a payment with your card, that will show up on your bank statement, and it'll give you the date on which that happened. It'll give you a description of the transaction, and it'll show you, was it a deposit, was it a EFT, etc., etc. And it also tells you who the payment was made to usually. it shows you the amount that was involved in the transaction. So if you go to the shop and you buy something for 100 Rand, it shows you on the bank statement that it was 100 Rand that you spent. Then there's also a column that tells you after every transaction how much money you still have in the account. So if I had 1,000 Rand in the account and I spend 100 Rand, my running total in the one column will be 900 Rand. Let's have a look at the next slide. Okay, the bank statement will also show information and will tell you who the account holder is. In other words, the person who that account belongs to. So in other words, it'll have your name on the account. The opening and closing balance will also be seen on one of these bank statements. The opening balance means when the bank statement at the beginning of the month, how much you had in there, and then at the end of the month, how much you had in your bank account then. Okay guys, just so you know, you've seen the word transaction, but that means anytime there is an event where money moves into or out of the account. Okay, next thing we need to know then is that a debit transaction is when money is paid out of the account. So when I go and I buy something and money moves out of the account, I've made a debit transaction. And when I receive money, so if I get paid my salary and that comes into my bank account, that is called a credit transaction. Let's have a look at an example of a bank statement. Okay, so next to me here we can see a picture of a made-up bank statement. You can see it shows all sorts of different information. First of all, over here, we can see that it shows all the different transactions that have happened through the month. It has the date closest to me on the right-hand side. It has the details of the account of the transaction next to that. In other words, where the money was paid to and etc., etc. Next to that, we have withdrawal and deposit. Okay, so the withdrawal then is the money moving out of the account. So every time you pay for something or you take money from the ATM, and then the deposits is the money that moves into the account. So when you get paid for something, etc., etc. And then on the far left over there, you can see the running balance. So each time it tells you how much money is sitting in your account. Then at the bottom, it's got a total showing you the closing balance of that account. Other information we can see on here, you can see it's got the name of the account holder, that is Mary Jane Smith, and her address. Beneath that, we have the opening balance and the closing balance. And guys, you're going to see these. You might want to ask your parents to show you an example of their bank statements, but that's the general information we can get from these. So in the future, you're going to be asked questions and tests and exams about how to read through and deduce things from these bank statements. Let's go on to our next slide. Something you may see on your bank statement is a section called bank charges. Now, banks do not keep your money for free. They do charge you. After all, they have people working there and they have their employees and they need to pay expenses for their buildings, etc., etc. So they charge you to look after your money. Now, there are different types of charges. And these charges include things like initiation fees. And an initiation fee then is when you go and you open a new account. They will charge you once off a small fee to create that account and to get it started. Then there are monthly services and admin fees. And these are fees that are charged by the bank for looking after, maintaining, and providing that account. So every month the bank will charge you a little bit for looking after your money. Then we have transaction fees. Every time you go and you swipe your card to pay for something, or you draw money from an ATM, or you make an EFT, Now, the bank will charge you a small fee for each one of those. It is worth pointing out that different banks have different fees. Some will charge you more for certain things, others will charge you less for certain things. Sometimes banks will let you have a certain number of free transactions, or certain types of transactions will be free. So when you choose your bank, you must think about these things. Banks can also make money on interest. So when they loan you money, for example, they charge interest every month, and that interest then goes to them. We'll talk a bit more about interest in lessons further along the line. Okay guys, so just to recap everything we've looked at in this lesson. Banks provide a service by looking after your money, keeping it safe, and helping you to make sure that your investment can grow. There are different kinds of banking accounts. These include savings accounts, check accounts, fixed deposit accounts, credit accounts, and debit accounts. Every month you will be sent a bank statement that has information about all the different things that have been happening with your bank account. Every time there is a transaction, when there is money going in or coming out of your account, it will be reflected on this transaction, on this bank statement. The bank statement includes information about the transactions, in other words, what date it happened, information about the transaction and the amount involved in the transaction. It includes an opening and closing balance, the name of the account holder, and other important information like that. Banks need to earn money to keep their doors open, and so they will charge you to look after their money. You will be paying bank charges. Bank charges are things such as an initiation fee, a monthly service and admin fee, and transaction fees. So guys, in the future, in future tests and exams, you are going to have to answer questions about bank charges and bank statements. Usually